Welcome to another edition of the Nonprofit Leadership Studio. As you can see, we're at Change Happens. This is a super dynamic organization in Houston's 3rd Ward, though they have operations all over this area. And we're really excited to be here to talk to Helen Stagg, who's the CEO. We're going to talk a little bit about how she raises money, what she does, a little bit about her leadership style. But she's been here a while. She does a great job. We're excited to be here. So let's go on into Change Happens. Helen.
Hello, how are you?
How are you doing? I'm so glad to be here.
It's so good to have you here.
Nice to
Thank
see
you.
Oh, yes. So you guys have been here quite a while, right?
We have. We moved here in 2005, so about 15 years we've been in this building.
Wow, wow. So I want the class to get an idea of the stuff that you guys do here because it's exciting work. I want to learn more about you. And the focus, we want to really focus on, how do you raise money? How do you keep this place going? Because that's a big deal. But first off, tell me, Helen, if you had to do the elevator speech of Change Happens, what would you be saying?
I would say that Change Happens is this wonderful place that provides a whole holistic services that meets the needs of people in our communities. So we have everything from after-school programs to housing programs, a whole range of programs that we've identified over the years where the need is.
Yeah. And are you focusing here in the 3rd Ward? Is that your main focus?
No, we're all over Harris County.
Yep.
Certainly 3rd Ward is our home and our headquarters here, but we're all over Harris County. And in some of our programs, we're in 30 other counties throughout Texas as well.
Wow. Yes. Like what sort of programs are you so widespread with?
Well, our Affordable Care Act, we're a Navigator program, one of 10 in the country. So we're in 30 counties helping to enroll consumers in health insurance, CHIP, Medicaid. We also have one of our prevention programs down in Waller County. And recently, we're going to be getting out the count for the census in other counties throughout Texas as well.
And do you have a program that sort of got you guys going? What's the reason and how did Change Happens start?
Change Happens started with one program as a substance abuse treatment program. Over the years, what we found is that when you're working with people, there are many other factors and determinants that affect people. Some of those factors contributed to people using substances. So we found a need to meet those demands, and we've grown based on what we found in working with people. So we know that we have, we see things, we see issues and problems, or people come to us, but also just as important is finding the evidence that what we're thinking is a need is really actually a need, and then putting those two together to build programs. And today we have over 18 different programs that we provide and services.
And of those 18, which one sort of brings in the most money, government money or otherwise?
Our substance misuse prevention programs for youth is one of our big funders with Health and Human Services Commission. Our funding with the Administration for Children and Families. We have 3 teen pregnancy prevention programs.
Oh, wow.
And our funding through the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention is one of our funding entities for our HIV outreach program. And also our funding from HUD for our permanent housing and programs.
Wow. So many interesting programs, right? But we live in a community in Texas. Texas is so wealthy, yet there's so many people that live in low-income households, right? It's sort of an interesting deal, contradiction in many ways. Yeah.
I mean, you can look here in the 3rd Ward area and see that. So you have the effects of the economic redevelopment, the things that are going on in terms of building, but also right here in this northern 3rd Ward where we're located, it's this pocket of poverty where income levels are $25,000 and below. So in the mix of downtown, the development that's going on, Texas Southern University of Houston, you still have that wide range of disparities between the populations in this community.
Do you guys talk about that a lot, about gentrification and what's happening with populations?
Yes, we do, because one of our programs that we have here, we started a program where we did a community assessment. A consortium of organizations came together in 2015, Project Row House CDC, Wheeler Avenue Church, Change Happens, and we were the lead agencies to bring about, to get funding from the Wells Fargo Foundation, and to develop a neighborhood plan about what the residents here wanted to see happen. So we brought all of those entities together. We did a door-to-door survey, actually going out through this area, knocking on 362 doors. We had 5 community engagement meetings, and we had a number of events where we were trying to get information from the people who live here about what they wanted to see for this Third Ward community. And from that, we developed a neighborhood plan. So this Northern Third Ward Implementation Group, which is a 24-member steering committee, is helping to bring about those things that the residents identified as being things that they'd like to see. There are 5 platforms in there: affordable housing, economic redevelopment, services for children and families, education, and community engagement. And under each of those 5 pillars are a number of activities and action steps that the subcommittee, that's also composed of residents, is working to bring about.
Wow. And this space that we're in, this little library, what is this used for here?
This is a part of our after-school program. So we have an after-school program and a summer program. We bring in kids after school, provide a service of tutoring and homework assistance. We bring in contractors to expose them to drama and theater and dance and just a wide variety of services. So that happens after school. We go to the various schools within a proximity of our location, pick them up, bring them here, their parents pick them up. During the summer, we expand that program to an all-day program. So, and we have much more kinds of activities, field trips. We spend a week over at the University of Houston in what's called Kids University, where we try to expose youth to the knowledge and that they too can go to college and the things that they can achieve there. We take them to a camp out in the wilderness. So it's a wide variety of experiences that they get to experience for 10 weeks during the summer. This is a library that was, part of this was funding from the Junior League, and Comerica Bank also increased it, so it's a community resource center. So it's available, and the books were donated to us, so it's an opportunity for kids to be surrounded with quiet spaces and spaces to read and to study and all of those
During
things.
the summer, do the kids get breakfast, lunch, dinner
They
here
get
as well?
breakfast, lunch, and snacks.
And snack, wow.
During the after-school program, they get afternoon snacks.
Yeah. That's a big deal for them as well. During the summer, we have such food insecurity in our neighborhoods, right? Yeah.
Yes.
So I want to ask you, Helen, about you. How did you end up doing this? I mean, are you from Houston yourself?
Well, I've been in Houston for about 44 years now, so I guess.
So you came as a baby then,
that's
is right?
But
where did you grow up, though?
I grew up in East Texas, in Nacogdoches, Texas.
Really?
I did, and then I went off to college.
Where'd you go to college?
I went to Texas A&M at Commerce, and from there I came back and I started working for the state of Texas, Health and Human Services, and moved to Beaumont, met my husband there.
Wow, in Beaumont. Yeah.
And then we later moved to Houston, and I worked for the state for about 22 years.
Wow.
And then I decided that was the only job I'd had after graduating from college, and I decided I didn't want just one experience, and I left after 22 years and started working in the nonprofit area.
Wow. Did you come straight to what is Change Happens?
No, I started with a state organization, a state nonprofit called Outreach Health Services, working with Texas Health Steps and developing that program for the Houston region.
Yeah.
And then I met Reverend Smith, who was the founder of Change Happens.
And what was the name of it back then?
It was Families Under Urban and Social Attack,
That's right.
FUSA.
Yeah, it was always sort of an awkward little name, right?
Yeah, and it was born out of the times when you're thinking 1989 and all of the things that were going on in this community. And I think, and I wasn't there at the time, but from what I've heard, it's how the people were in the community were feeling about all of the systems that were not equal, and the fact that they were suffering in a lot of areas. So I think it came out of that. But in 2010, we changed the name to Change Happens, because we wanted a name that would propel us into the future, and that would
it's a little bit more optimistic too, isn't it?
Yeah, more power that way, and all of the potential that we could do.
But the families under urban social attack, though, it's very real still, though, right? In terms of a lot of our families, right?
It is.
They feel that way, and experts, we know it's that way in some ways, right?
That's right.
So it's sort of interesting. So I want to walk over to see your after-school area, but as we walk over, as you lead Change Happens, especially around the fundraising, what are some of your bigger challenges?
I think probably one of our biggest challenges is that, when I stepped into this role 2 years ago, then what I found is I knew all of the mechanics of leading an organization, but it's that emotional, overwhelming sense of responsibility for the lives of all of the people who work
Everyone who works here, right?
All of the people that we serve, and then the sustainability of this organization going into the future, and how was I going to help make a difference that it could continue on into the future.
What was it a surprise? This is often a surprise sometimes to CEOs, this idea that the fundraising in many ways rests with them. Sometimes you hear from younger staff, well, that's the development's job. Was the burden even greater than you thought?
Yes, it is. Because, one of the things that when you're in a smaller nonprofit organization, and particularly if a lot of your funding is coming from public funding, you don't have the resources to have a development person. So Change Happens struggled with that for a long time as we grew.
Wow.
But in the last 7 years or so, we've had the opportunity to raise funds that we were able to fund that position. But you still have to be competitive in the salary to be able to pay for that. So, that's certainly an issue of having the right person, right mix, and then having the resources to attract the talent that you need as well. So that's one of the areas I think that we struggle
It's hard
with.
finding good development people too, right? I mean, there are a lot of people who want development jobs, but it seems like it's hard to find really good people. So,
in the true sense of what the expectations there, I find that a lot of them are more about special events and putting on those kinds of things, as opposed to the true how you need that area of helping to raise funds.
Developing all those relationships
That's right.
and everything.
And particularly in the area, like I said, we are at about 85% of public funding. So we want to build that base. And what we know is that, we do a really good job in writing applications for funding, public funding. And people are just reading what's on the page and your history and your organizational capacity. But in the other with foundations, and particularly local corporations, individuals, it's more about building those relationships. And so that's, the struggle that we have growing those.
I've been part of some national conversations about organizations and fundraising, and specifically as we have more and more organizations that are led by people of color, right? We want to encourage a lot of young people. And one of the discussions is it tougher when you think of all the philanthropies that are old white guys and old white women, is it tougher for a person of color to raise money? Is it tougher for you as a woman of color to raise money in philanthropies, do you think, from your perspective?
Well, I think so. I think so because, who sits on the boards of these organizations? Who sits on the boards of the foundations? And if African Americans or Hispanics have not had the opportunity to sit on those boards or to bring that experience to those boards or to open the board up to thinking about minority-led organizations. You don't have that kind of connection that would benefit and help you. So I think that's probably one of the biggest challenges is getting in to talk to people about who you are and what you're doing, and to really help them to understand what a worthwhile investment the organization is.
When you think about a lot of the larger foundations, we know a couple, right, that have been intentional about changing their boards. I mean, the Houston Endowment here in Houston has been intentional, and some others don't even have an idea, right? I mean, it's a family foundation, and so they have no comprehension of what's going on there in some ways.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah. And we don't want to speak poorly of anyone because we get money from a lot of those places, but it is a very interesting thing that they make demands on us without looking inwardly. So anyway, that's a whole different deal. So this space here, how many kids do you have in your after-school program and your summer programs? And this is just one of the spaces I assume that they use.
Yeah, we have the spaces surrounded by classrooms. We got a computer lab. So the library, we have an after-school playground area. But we have in these after school about 45 students. In the summer, we have anywhere from 75 to 80. We generally have to put a max number there and have a waiting list because of the capacity of it.
Yeah. And is the toughest part raising money to have as many kids as you would like?
No, for us it's the space and the limitation and the having the staff ratio. So the funding is, we have enough funding that's built in for this particular program. So that hadn't been such an issue, but space is certainly one.
Yeah.
We've in the past, to accommodate more students, we've formed partnerships with organizations like Good Hope Baptist Church. Where they have a big, wide area with a gym and classrooms. And so we partnered with them. We partnered with Cullen Middle School to have more space there as well. So we've done
really
those
good.
Kind of
that
things.
sort of maximizes everyone's abilities then, right?
Yeah.
When you're fundraising, Helen, what is the program that sort of lights everyone's eyes up a little bit more than others? So if you're meeting with a philanthropy or an individual giver, what are the programs that people seem to get excited about?
I think those programs that are more about working with youth. So anything in the area of education and prevention, those programs. One program that really seems to generate a lot of excitement is our mentoring programs.
Oh, wow.
And we have 3 mentoring programs. And we just recently was selected as one of 10, again, with the Obama Foundation for an impact grant for My Brother's Keeper, which we are mentoring boys and young men of color at Yates High School. And that's an exciting program that people are really interested in. That group that meets our subcommittee, leading the efforts of things happening here in Third Ward, that's also a really exciting.
People like that.
People like that,
Yeah. And are there programs that you obviously see that there's a real need, but it's, I'll give you an example. At Children at Risk, people get excited about human trafficking, but it's so hard to raise. People would much rather give money to public education and public health and not trafficking, though they want to hear about trafficking, but it's hard for us to raise money for that. Is there something like that for you guys, something that's a little bit harder to raise money for?
I think one of our hardest programs maybe is in our HIV programs to raise money. A lot of that has to do with the stigma. A lot of that is the belief that that's a behavior that contributes to it. So that's one area where it's a little bit harder to raise funding for. I mean, you can get the public funding, but from private funding, it's a little bit difficult.
You hope that things change slowly, but it's slower than we would want them to be, right?
That's true.
Exactly. Your biggest challenge, Helen, as being the CEO here, what has been your biggest challenge?
When I came into the organization as the CEO, I did some assessments in some particular areas. One was in our financial assessment. One was with our IT to make sure we're safeguard and all of the things that can happen to an organization. In our human resources, that area as well. And out of that came these assessment reports. I think the biggest thing is just developing, attracting the workforce and developing the workforce, and then building the workforce. We have a really, I think, the most talented group of individuals working for this organization. I mean, really energetic and really caring and concerned and dedicated and committed to what we do.
We'll see them as we walk through upstairs.
You will.
It's a young group, right?
It is.
Relatively.
Basically, I think our average age is around 35 or so.
Wow. So about your age. So 35 is about where
About
it is.
my
Yeah.
age.
Yeah.
But, you know, keeping them, retaining them, and then building the workforce, that's probably, I think, some of the biggest challenge.
Is it hard to retain? Because I find young people are harder, a little bit harder to retain.
Yeah, I mean, a number of them come straight out of college,
Yeah.
and they may work 3 to 5 years or so, and then they go out into the community, and people see them and see what they're doing, because we are there. We're in schools. We're out at various places. Most of our work is in the community, so they get to see them and get to see their work ethic and everything they do, and then they kind of entice them away, I guess. But so the average tenure here is probably about 5 years, I think.
That's good, right?
It's pretty good.
I think that's really good.
We don't have a real turnover rate that's really high.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of that has to do with, you know, just trying to put programs and things in place that support them, but also to make sure that they understand how important they are to change happens, how much we value them, and then bringing all of that in.
Wow. Good. Well, let's walk through here. Is this, so this space, you see people, this is usually full of kids in an after-school program,
Yes,
is that right?
it is.
Yeah.
And we also host parent meetings here as well. So the parents come in once a month. We have a meeting with them to talk about things that are going on in the program, things that we're doing, things that are new.
Yeah.
A lot of our community, we have people all over the community who will call and ask for space. That's, you know, in this area, there's not a lot of space that's available for group meetings. So they will call and ask. So we try to use all of the space to help be a resource to the Third Ward community as well.
When you look at the people you serve and the kids that come here, what's the demographic breakdown a little bit? You know, because Houston is such a changing place, right?
It is. So it just depends on our program. Our after-school program is probably about 95% African American. The summer program is probably about 90% African American. All of our other programs are pretty much the Navigator program, for instance, where we're talking with people about health insurance. You're going to have more of a wide diversity of African Americans and Latinos and white as well, and Asian. So it's kind of more broad. In some of those 30 counties, it's going to be more heavily one or the other because whatever the county makeup is. But in our programs like our teen pregnancy prevention program, we're going into schools, so our population is going to be the demographics of whatever that school is.
Yeah. Is there, you know, in the community, as I talk to public officials, there's sort of an unwritten, sometimes a competition, right? And competition is probably the wrong word, but where you have historic African American populations and new Latino populations, and there's sort of a struggle sometimes for funding and attention, probably because we have a lack of resources overall. What is, you know, how do you guys address that? Because so many historic African American neighborhoods have become more Latino and things are changing.
Right. So we don't look at competition. We look at more of collaboration. So in every program that we develop, we try to look at if something's already been done, or do we need to bring people in? Are we the right people to do it? but we always look for collaboration and partners. So in a number of our grants, we ask people to come in as a subcontractor.
Yeah.
Or we go in with them as a subcontractor. So we look at how can we collaborate and bring it together, not competition. You know, with the Northern Third Ward group that we have,
Yeah.
you know, there are a lot of entities here who are working on issues of affordable housing. That was one of the things that made us unique, is that we brought all of these various stakeholders to the table to talk about how we could implement this plan, and then work with everybody else that's working here.
Yeah. I do think it's an interesting little dynamic, but I think you're right. We have to move past that in many ways,
We
right?
do. And I think there is so much of a need. There's so much services that, you know, everybody will be able to, I believe, thrive more by collaboration than be limited by it.
Yeah, you saw it on the school board, though, right, where there was this clash, you know,
Yes.
and it drove all of us crazy, though, right? So it was very interesting. So next we're going to go upstairs, and this is where you have all your staff. And tell me, the budget for Change Happens is about how much?
It's about nearly $8 million.
Yeah, so it's a good-sized budget. And you have how many staff
We
people?
have 63 employees.
And how many of the 63 are based right here in the home office?
All of them are based here,
Okay.
but they're constantly in and
Going
out.
all over the place. Wow.
Yes.
Wow, very interesting. And when you think about the future of Change Happens, you know, what might Change Happens, if everything worked out the way you wanted it to, what would it look like in 5 years from now?
Well, in 5 years, I think we would. I think we're going to be having additional space,
Yeah.
so that we can expand. I think we will expand our programs. I think we're looking at other kind of innovative programs that we're looking to develop. You know, we're working right now with the Sickle Cell Organization, for instance, and there are some particular issues about sickle cell, which affects African Americans disproportionately as well.
Right.
And so the issues that of being in care, of going to emergency rooms for treatment, and what causes that, and how might community health workers help to bring the cost of care down. But also issues like the fact that African Americans are not generally seen for research for diseases like sickle cell, and not brought into that kind of conversation, and how we can include that. So we're working on this kind of innovative approach using an evidence-based health model that would provide some funding to do various kinds of activities. So we want to do more of that kind of innovative kind of programming. We'd also like to expand to have more of a, you know, diversify our funding with some kind of social enterprise as well. And
do you have ideas around that?
We've talked about it. We've done some strategic planning around it, but we haven't really
You haven't found
found it yet.
Man, that's what we all look for, right? Isn't that social? The Girl Scout cookies for us, right? What are you going to do? You know, it brings up one more question before we walk on. A lot of discussion about Medicare for all and sort of universal health coverage for people. How would something like that affect you guys and affect the populations that we serve?
Well, I think that the population that we served, it would certainly be of benefit to them. You know, because we work with people who don't have health insurance, who can't afford it, or all of the various reasons. So those people certainly would benefit by it.
How would it affect you guys as an organization?
Certainly, you know, one of our costs is providing health insurance to our employees. And
well, that's right,
I'm not sure how the policy will be written, but it certainly could bring down that cost. It's one of our most
It could be a boon
costs.
overall, right? I mean, you just never know how it works out. So, all right, so we're going to go up. I think we're going to take the elevator upstairs, and we'll get to see your whole staff up there.
Okay,
so,
great.
Very good. So this is sort of the heart of your operation then, Helen. This is where you have all your staff.
That's right. We're all here in this second floor area, and all of our programs, all of our staff.
And your staff are super happy?
I think so. Let's hope so.
So, what sort of stuff, talk about as a leader, what sort of stuff do you guys do to sort of build morale and stay excited?
Okay.
Oh, here's your
Maybe
big
they
team
can,
right here, yeah.
Answer that.
Yeah.
We have a number of new people here. But
This is your adult services, is this
so
right?
we have our housing program here. It's most of this area is adult, but housing here. We also have a program called STARS where we work with substance misuse and co-occurring mental disorders and housing and homelessness. We also have our HIV program here in this area. So these are all of our adult services.
Wow, very good. And so what is the thing, I mean, people work on stuff that sometimes can be depressing. So how do you guys as an organization sort of stay positive, stay active, stay happy?
Okay, so Deborah, how do we stay healthy and happy?
So this is Deborah.
This is Deborah Vales.
Deborah doesn't have a mic, so I'm going to have to stand real
Okay.
close to Deborah. Deborah, so nice to meet you. How do you guys stay excited?
We stay excited by really trusting in each other and, keeping a positive attitude. We have different, what we call powwow meetings, keep us pumped up here. So,
What's a powwow meeting? Talk about a powwow meeting.
So sometimes when we have big announcements or things that we need to do, we kind of gather together and basically just have a quick, meeting. But it's really like a cheering session for a lot of the staff. So it may be on a Friday where we say, hey, we got some big announcements and we want to recognize people. So we do that quite often.
Helen, how often do you guys do powwow meetings?
Probably about once every other month or so. We just had
Yeah.
one
Yes.
last week on Friday. But it just depends on what's happening around events or we have a thing, an award that we give that's called I See You Award, and that's within the team members. They see people or recognize them, and they pass that along.
Oh, that's
so
nice.
We did that this past Friday. So
Do you guys do potlucks?
we had one of
one
those last week too. We, in celebration of Black History Month, we
Yeah.
had a potluck of soul food.
Oh, my word.
Yeah.
What was the best thing?
The Salisbury steak.
Okay.
That was made by Elizabeth Guzman.
What was it?
That she made a Salisbury steak.
Salisbury steak, and that was the best thing, right? Wow, interesting, right? So, well, I love potlucks, but we had a COO for a while who always thought that she was going to get food poisoning, so they decreased for a while, but now that she's gone, they're back on the way up. So, because I love a good potluck, so very good.
Some of the other things, that we do is that spotlight on birthdays every month,
yeah.
and our anniversaries of the month, and different kind of little shout outs. And so we use this wall to kind of highlight and show that.
Well, that's a good idea, right? To do this, yeah, to do the birthdays of the month.
Right.
So, yeah, and everyone's always 29. Is that the deal? So, very
And we have
good.
our quarterly team meetings and that we also bring everybody together for that. And there are a number of recognitions that we give in terms of outstanding work or recognizing someone for something that they've contributed, and that could be anything from emails and cards and taking people out to lunch or whatever it might be.
Do you have a weekly staff meeting?
I do have a weekly, one of the things that we do is I do a weekly touch base meeting and just meet to talk about things that are going on for that week, any kind of.
Is that the whole staff or
No,
your senior
this is
staff?
just the senior staff. And then we meet together quarterly as a senior staff. Yeah.
Wow, that's good. And I want to get, is your development office sort of in this area as well, or?
Yeah, and we have one person who
One
works
person.
in that area.
You need a bigger development office, right?
That's true.
Yeah. So talk about, of your $8 million budget, 85% of it is government funded. Talk a little bit more about, how much you're getting in individual giving, how much you're getting in foundations, approximately about.
So that other 15%, I would say it's probably about 8% through corporations and foundations, and the other through individual giving.
Wow.
About 7% through individual giving.
And do you, your individual givers, do you have some major givers, or are we talking sort of little gifts, a lot of little gifts?
We have some major givers, people who have consistently given
Yeah.
or pledged an amount over, a period of time.
And what's a major gift for you guys? $500, $1,000?
Well, I was thinking 5,000.
5,000.
As
Okay.
a major.
Oh, that's good. And so you have a number of major
Right.
givers. Yeah, that's good. And how about your board? What's your board like here at Change Happens?
We have a 9-member board, and it's diverse, African American, Latino, and we have one member who is with the Junior League.
Oh, yeah.
Doing the outside board representation program.
Yeah.
And of course they all also give and contribute.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you know about how much your board brings to you guys every year?
In total dollar amounts,
yeah.
I would say probably about 15,000.
Yeah. So that's not too bad.
No.
Is there a give or get for your board members?
No.
No. Just a giving of their time.
That's
and
right.
the most important
Right.
thing.
We don't have an amount. Of course, there's an expectation that they'll
Yeah.
support in a variety of ways,
Yeah.
but there is no amount tied to it.
So we've started seeing, as for instance, the Brown Foundation says we need to see 100% board giving. Is that hard for you guys to be able to show that, or you just tell those board members to give us something, or?
No, it's not hard because we have that
Okay.
already. So,
Yeah.
each one of them give and donate some kind of monetary amount,
Yeah,
and the
yeah.
amount just varies between individual board members.
I always feel like we have a board, over 30 people, but I always feel like there's always one board member, right, who you'd like, can you give,
Yeah.
And sometimes I felt like I had to give for them or something, just to get up to 100% giving. So probably people we know, so-
Yeah.
So,
Gotcha.
but just because you don't give doesn't mean you're not giving to the organization in some particular
Some
way,
way.
right? But that's how some foundations sort of measure this, right? So-
That's true. I think one of the times when we were talking with David Weekly, the home developer, and he was talking about there are 3 ways that board members should contribute, and one is through
You don't have to stay in the bathroom. You could walk through. It's okay.
one is through their wealth and through their wisdom and through their work. So, you can kind of look at that way, and you'll have a diverse kind of board with these diverse contributions. And you'll sometimes, if you're trying to attract people to your board of the people that you serve, they're not going to have the wealth to do that.
Right.
But they may have the work and the wisdom that you need. And
Yeah.
all of those components are important.
Yeah. How do you choose your chair of the board?
The board chooses the chair,
Yeah.
so they.
Do you have a big say yourself in that?
I don't
No.
contribute to that.
Yeah.
That's my own choice, not to
Yeah.
try to.
Is that frustrating sometimes?
No. It's
You're
not-
just used
not
to
for
that,
me.
huh? Yeah.
It's not that I'm so used to it. It's that I like to see things happen through organic kind of processes with not my influence. I think it's important, particularly for that board to act independently and to accept ownership. But those are decisions that they need to make, not
Yeah.
me.
Yeah. What would your board or some of your staff say is your leadership style, Helen?
I don't
Your
know
staff is
what
all
they'd
listening.
say.
Yeah.
I know what I hope they would say.
What do you hope they would say?
That I give them try to provide the tools and everything that they need, the resources for them to use their talent and skills and to be independent in making decisions and taking risks, and that there is in trusting and believing in their power. That's what I hope they would say.
Yeah. Wow. And do you have mentors yourself, people who've guided you?
I do. I have not a whole lot of people, but
Yeah.
there are a couple of people that, yeah.
Yeah.
And I have one now that I really just met and just forming a kind of relationship with.
It's so nice, right? Because sometimes your mentors can be a little bit more honest with you about stuff. And,
They can.
yeah, which is really good. And you
Yeah.
could ask them anything.
And that's the other thing, as they say, it's kind of lonely at the top. So there are things that you can't share with. You have no one else
Right.
to share with. That mentor
Yeah.
provides that opportunity to talk about things and to get feedback, not necessarily telling you this or that, but just to listen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to get back to development real quickly. When you go out for a meeting with a grant officer from a philanthropy or someone from corporate giving or one of your major donors, and maybe it's you and your director of development or another board member, how do you guide that conversation along? What does that look like when you're meeting? And I know everyone's a little bit different, but in general.
I think what I try to do is tell a little bit about the organization, who we are, what services, what our commitment is. I also like to try to show a little bit about me so that they can see who I am as the leader of the organization and develop, some trust in my capabilities as well. So I think those are the two things. And then I, from there, let them ask questions and lead the conversation.
How do you begin to do that, to develop that relationship? I mean, are you asking them questions, or are you just talking about your passion? How do you usually manage that?
So, it's a whole thing to just get to face-to-face
I
meetings.
know.
So, you've built something through that whole process. And then when you go, you only have, a short amount of time.
Right.
So you're basically just going in to talk more like that elevator speech where you're trying to show what you are and what you do. And then from there, just kind of let them go.
Yeah. Are people, it just seems to me that a place like Change Happens, people are predisposed to like what's going on, I would guess.
In most instances, sometimes you hear people say that I don't know that much about you, or I don't know what you're doing, or I haven't kept up with you, and so it's bringing them in to introduce them to who we are and what we do. And that has changed, and it's getting better, but it still exists. So just really getting people the opportunity to know that one of our events, the one that's coming up in April, is a spring breakfast. The whole intent is to introduce Change Happens to new people who don't know who we are and what we're doing. So we have people who act as table captains from various places. Then they bring 10 people with them who may not know anything about us, so that we can begin to build those kind of relationships.
How much you guys raise from that?
Generally, it's not a fundraising activity. It's more of the introduction, but other people do donate. Between 50 and 60,000.
It's not too bad, right?
Yeah.
And that's your spring breakfast? When is that?
It's April the 3rd. Yeah.
Wow. Very
It's
good.
over at the Junior League.
Yeah. And does the Junior League give you that space for free since you have the connection?
No, they do not. But they give a good price.
Yeah.
So
Oh,
that's one
good.
of the reasons why we try to stay there, is because it's a real reasonable price.
And people know it too,
and
right?
people know
and
it.
people like the orange rolls. And,
And it's easy to get to, and it's easy to park. So it's really convenient.
This is your youth services area here?
Our youth services, this is our prevention program for, in terms of prevention of substance use in youth. So you see a lot of people not here because they're in schools and various places like that. Our teen pregnancy prevention programs occupy the other half of the space as well.
Teen prevention in Texas, when you have a state government that doesn't seem to, want to care about that issue, how does that work for you guys?
The teen pregnancy prevention? So it's basically more working and building relationships with the individual schools or school districts. And so working with school districts or school principals and talking with them and building those kind of relationships. Also, there are private schools that we, like schools, we're on a number of their campuses as well. So it's building the relationship within the individual schools.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Such an important issue, right? That that not enough people are paying attention to, right?
No, that's right. And certainly with teen pregnancy, the United States still leads the world in terms of teens who are getting pregnant.
And Texas leads the country in many ways, right?
Right.
What is it, on second pregnancies, I think?
That's
Houston and
right.
Dallas at the top?
Repeated.
Yeah, repeated, So, very interesting.
So,
Very good. And then this sort of marks out all your space then?
No, we have a little space
Little
here
back here.
where our navigator program
Oh, yeah.
is. And so we also have our mentoring programs back here. And we have a program that we work with TANF eligible or meeting the income level
Yep.
for TANF to send them and pay for tuition at Houston Community College.
Oh, wow.
For them to receive a certification in fields like welding and forklift driving or logistics, and then we work to, once they get that certification and those credentials, to connect them to employment. So that program is here as well.
Do people like working in sort of the open concept?
I think so, but I think
Some
what
like it
we're-
more than others?
Yeah, and I think one of the things what we're working on now is to kind of renovate this space to make it more, to add a little bit more privacy, and then
Oh.
also to have more of a pod area. So we're looking at how we can do that. But in terms of linking and connections with one another, it's good in that way. But we also find there's some limitations to it. So right now we're looking at what can we do to, we're actually looking at how we can build this out differently.
In our Dallas office for Children at Risk, in the center, we put like lots of couches and stuff so people to hang out. People tend to like that. And they still work from there, right? Sometimes they bring their laptops and just,
Yeah, that's a neat idea.
yeah. There's lots of possibilities, so. And how about working from home? Is there much working from home here?
We don't, but one of the things we're exploring is how can we use other kinds of techniques to do what we need to do.
Yeah.
So we have an HR consultant that's working with us.
Oh, really?
And so that's one of the things that we're exploring, various ways, you know.
You guys gonna put a coffee bar in here or anything like that?
Well, we have a break room and we do have coffee in there. And we're getting ready to expand our little snack accessories and stuff. So we have the.
It's interesting, right? We live in a whole different. When you and I were growing up, we would have never thought about these things, right?
Yeah,
But this
you
is
could-
what a lot of young people expect of it.
That's right. That's
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
I was. I think one of those big companies, Google or Yahoo or somebody, and they were talking about all of those amenities that they, particularly in the tech industry,
Yeah.
of what they put in for the employees there.
So one of our big final questions before we go to the next part of our visit today is some of your favorite restaurants in town, Helen. What are some of your favorite restaurants?
Well, in this area, you know, I love Ninfa's for Mexican food.
Yes, Ninfa's.
And the Empire Cafe is
Yeah,
one of my favorite.
down the road,
down
yeah.
in Midtown there. And also there's a place called District 7 that I like. It's
Yeah.
right off of downtown.
That's a good place to bring people for lunch, right? Donors and stuff,
Yeah.
yeah. So we're going to go off to Ninfa's, right? So Ninfa's is
Great.
going to have a little room for us, and this is where I get to ask you all sorts of other questions as well.
Okay.
So,
Sounds
so that's it for now. We're going to go over to Ninfa's, and we'll go from there. So Helen, you love Ninfa's here on Navigation.
I do. I love it very much.
Yeah, so it's a really nice place, right? It's historic here in Houston.
Yeah, I've been
Great
coming
food.
here for a long time. And they've expanded a lot since I first came, but
Yeah.
it still has that authentic kind of feel like the first time I came, so I love it.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
So it's a beautiful place. So, so I know Adriana's coming over to say a few words to us. So Adriana, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are y'all guys doing?
Very
Hi.
good, very good. Do you guys have specials and stuff usually, or?
Oh yes. So like every 3 months, the chef he makes these original chef specials, and you know they're actually very great. I don't know if you can see them right over here.
Yeah.
You see. So right now we're like in the crawfish season, so it's like seafood, you know. So we have a bunch of like crawfish tortilla soup, which is very great. Also cabrito en jugo, you know, a lot of people don't know what that is. It's goat, you know, but they try and they say they love it. They always come back for seconds.
Wow.
It's great.
And a crispy potato quesadilla. What's that?
Yes, so I guess you could say it's kind of like a fried taco, and it has potato inside.
Wow.
So it's very good.
Wow,
It's
that sounds
more like
fantastic.
it's kind of like a flauta, you could say.
Yeah, yeah, very good. But I think we're gonna. By the way, I had some of these roasted oysters the other day. Those are fantastic
Yes,
as well.
we had those last season, and we had to leave them on there because people love them so much.
Yeah, they're fantastic. So why don't we do an order of fajitas that Helen and I can share? Does that sound okay? And
What do you like, beef, chicken, or
what do you
mix?
like?
I like a mixture.
Yeah, that sounds good. Can we do
Alright,
mixed?
So I get 2 side orders of beans. So what do you like? Refried, charros, or refried black beans?
Charro for
Charro
me.
beans?
Yeah, I'm not gonna eat beans. I'm
Okay.
just gonna have the
of
fajitas.
course.
Yeah. So very good.
Alright.
Thank
you.
you very much,
You're
Adriana. Very good. So Helen, how often, for me, when I do a lot of fundraising, I go out to lunch a lot. Is that something that you do very often in terms of fundraising? Take people out to lunch, out to coffee?
Not very often. No. Generally, it's in their office or meeting at a space that's convenient for them. But no, I have not taken just a few people, but not very many.
Do you go out with your board members or anything like that?
We do go out with board members. We have a board retreat as well, and board meetings. Generally, our meetings are held at our office, but we bring in food and have it catered. And sometimes we'll go out during the holidays for various events as well.
I do happy hours with people sometimes as well, though I have to watch how much I drink, right? So I think that's... But I just love the idea of having happy hours with people. And we have one of our board members is a chef, David Cordua.
Okay.
And so he loves to come on those happy hours as well. And because it's chefs, they often send a lot of food out and stuff, for another chef. So that's always sort of fun.
Neat.
Yeah, that's really good. So tell me about, for you, working in government and then moving into the nonprofit world. What was the big difference for you when you did that move?
I think for me, government entities are really these big bureaucratic organizations, and so they have a lot of the components of a bureaucracy that really kind of hierarchy, a lot of rules, regulations. So I think the biggest thing was the independence, the freedom. Nonprofit organizations, they're taking risks, they're coming up with ideas and innovative solutions and resolving issues. If you wanted to change something in a government entity, there's a whole process over a period of time that has to go through all of these steps. But in the nonprofit organization, you don't have time for all of that. You have to be decisive, resolve it, meet the challenges head on. So that was the most welcoming and the biggest difference, but it was a big reward for me as well.
Yeah. And do you find that you can turn on a dime? Is it pretty easy, a change happens to just sort of change up pretty quickly?
It's pretty easy considering,
comparatively, right? I'm sure, right?
It's pretty easy.
Yeah. And how about, one of the things that I find sometimes is that I'll have myself and a couple board members that are very interested in change, but there might be 1 or 2 senior staff members or some young people that are inherently a little bit more conservative, and so there has to be more of a sale. And I get that I'm the boss, right? And so I can make that change, but sort of this whole idea of inclusion, though, and sometimes it's still a little bit of a sale. Do you find that as well?
Yeah, I think, when you're making those kind of changes, and one of the things that I try to do from the beginning is to really create the picture of what's going on and what's happening and how things may not be working as we need them to work. So I think you have everybody can see that at that point of what the problem is. And then the next step is just to try and open it up for people to talk about it and brainstorm and give their ideas and opinions. And so I try to move through a process so that at the end we're kind of really built a consensus that everybody can take ownership in. And that seems to work pretty well.
And how about work-life balance for you? Do you have much work-life balance?
I'm trying to increase that. I also teach. I'm an adjunct at University of Houston.
In which program, Helen?
The College of Social Work.
Oh yeah.
And so I do that, but there's so many ways that you can do teaching now.
Yep.
So it's not that big challenge, and I work 50, 60 hours a week.
Yeah, I know.
So trying to build that in. And I have an elderly mother as well. And so
Does she live at home with you?
she lives in Nacogdoches.
Oh, okay.
But I travel there 2 or 3 times a month. And to supplement the care that we have coming in. She's in her home, but she's 95 years old. So, I try to make sure that is certainly a part of everything that I do at this particular stage. It's a lot.
Yeah.
But just trying to keep it all in some kind of balance and organized, and then just really realizing where you are and what you're doing. That's just where you are and that's what you're doing.
Yeah. It's so interesting, right? That as I interview CEOs, this idea of work-life balance, and many times they will start with a little laugh, right? Because I think all of us, we don't know we may have it, but in many ways we lose it sometimes, or it's just a different thing. And someone even said the other day, I don't know why we call it work-life balance. I mean, we're doing what we like doing, It's even if it's work, we still like it,
That's right, and that's the other thing. I think a lot of it has to do with how you look at it. Somebody may see you moving and working, and they think maybe that, she's just working too hard and all of that. But when you're doing it, you're feeling, this is what I like to do, this is what I love to do, so you don't see it so much as a stressful struggle to do it.
Yeah.
And so I think if you love what you do, that it changes the whole dynamic of that.
Yeah. And you may be thinking about it all weekend, but it's not. You can stop thinking about it, but it's up to you in many ways, right, to do that. And tell me about you growing up, Helen. I mean, what was it like growing up in Nacogdoches?
So Nacogdoches is a town in East Texas. It's known to be the oldest town in Texas.
Is it? Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. And the university is there. Stephen F. Austin University is there as well. So I grew up certainly, in the 50s and 60s. I graduated from high school in 1970. So I'm right in the height of civil rights and all of those things. And while all of that was going on around me, I had an idyllic childhood.
Did you really?
It could have come out of a Huckleberry Finn book or novel in terms of the kind of experience that I had. But so I was protected by, and all children that I grew up with, we were protected from a lot of things. So I never felt I never was called out of my names or any of that kind of stuff. So I didn't meet up with that kind of hostility. You had teachers and, our community with our church and teachers and all of those things that were brought in. I think it was really idyllic.
Yeah, wow. And were you a first-generation college student yourself? Or?
No. My father also went to college, and he didn't graduate because he went to the war. He was a World War II veteran.
Really?
So he went overseas, and he was on the Asian Pacific region.
Yeah. Where was he in the Pacific?
Mostly in Guam.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. And so when you went off to college, what was the reaction from your parents? Was it what you were expected to do, or?
And I had an older sister, and my older sister had, who was 8 years older than I was, had gone to college and graduated. She was a music major, a pianist, and so of course the limitations in where she could go to school. So she graduated from Prairie View at that time.
Yeah.
And my brothers, I had twin brothers.
Wow.
And they went to Stephen F. Austin in town there.
Yeah.
And I have another brother who went and joined the Navy. And then I didn't want to go to school in Stephen F. Austin, and that's when I went off to, it was called East Texas State University. It's Texas A&M University at Commerce now. And that's when I went off there.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So you come from a family with a rich history of, at least your immediate family. They were used to going to college. And
Yeah, and I think, there were things that were brought into our community that inspired you to want something to go to college. As I mentioned, the teachers.
Yeah.
At our church we had all of us took piano lessons, for instance. My father played violin. So,
Wow.
there were things, all of that culture and all of that history was there to anticipate that you would go on to school.
And how does that compare to the childhood that someone in the 3rd Ward or in the 5th Ward is getting here or in Gulfton? How do you compare those childhoods and what's lacking right now in some of those?
Well, in my growing up, everybody was community, so everybody cared about everybody looked out for each other. So you had many kinds of mentors and people who were working with you and opening up all of these kinds of opportunities. So everybody had a vested interest in how you turned out, and they made that really clear and known to.
Yeah. Now those are some fajitas right there, huh? Wow. So at this point, Helen, the camera crew is just salivating because they know that they're going to get some of these fajitas at some point. So.
Yeah, it looks good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
This is fantastic. Is this the most popular thing here,
Yes,
Adriana?
that's
People
what
love the
everybody
fajitas.
comes for the fajitas. That's what we're all known for.
And what's on top of the chicken here?
Pechuga gravy. It's what gives it the best flavor.
Wow, excellent, very good. And we have a lot of tortillas here.
Yes, of
We're all
course.
set.
If
Okay.
you need any more,
And they,
just let me know.
and
okay?
they make the tortillas
Oh,
right
yes.
here, yeah, right?
They're,
Are they made out of lard?
oh no.
No, they don't. I love lard tortillas.
They're very good though. I promise you they're the best.
Yeah, okay, excellent.
enjoy.
Thank you very much. Helen, would you like one?
I think so. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. All right. It smells so good, doesn't it?
Yeah, it looks good and smells good.
So I grew up in Puerto Rico.
Did you?
Yeah, and it
Okay.
was a very different deal. And but I was the first one in my family to go to college, right?
Okay.
So, and I think what's interesting is that I didn't get a lot of support, right, from my family. Didn't think I should go to college, which was
Why was that?
they thought I should go to work like everyone else.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you spent all of you were born in Puerto Rico too?
I was born in the States, but we moved to Puerto Rico when I was in 1st grade. And then I stayed there. My parents got divorced, and we went to Puerto Rican school. Stayed there through high school.
Okay.
And then I decided to go to college. And I mean, I was one of those kids. I was like always the smartest kid. I was a big nerd, right? So I was always the smartest kid. We didn't have a TV. We couldn't afford one, so I read everything. And so when I went to go to college, it was I loved it, right? It was just a fantastic thing. So it's very interesting.
Where did you go to college?
I went to Florida State.
Okay.
Yeah. So I went to college not necessarily liking football, but after going to Florida State, you just sort of, we went to every single game while we were there. So.
I was thinking about you during the time of the Oscars. Do you still have your Academy Awards party or event or?
I haven't had it the last 2 years, but this year it was so quiet during the Oscars. I thought I need to do that party again.
Yeah.
So,
Did you see all of the best nominated films?
yeah. And
Which
I was
one was
really
your favorite?
Well, I liked Parasite a
Did
lot.
you?
Have you seen it?
No.
It's a little hard to watch, right? But it's a good movie. because it's really a social commentary, right? It's the real division between the rich and the poor. And while it's in South Korea, you can make those connections pretty easily.
Right.
And no, the idea is that it's con people trying to con their lives but they're just trying to con themselves into a job with these rich people. It's like, it's not a real con because you're still working for these people. And it's sort of like life, right?
Yeah.
It's, so it was very interesting. So.
Yeah.
So let me ask you one or two quick questions, and then we'll let the cameraman eat.
Okay.
So if you had to pick for you, the most important leadership skill, what would be that skill would you say?
I think to really know people, care about people, empathize with people. I think everything that I don't think that you can create great things or good things without people and working through people. So I think knowing how to understand people, how to treat people, how to respect people is the number one thing.
Wow.
I was having this conversation with someone before, and there was an Army general, and he was talking about he had gone to inspect his troops, and they had brought in ice cream, but they didn't have any spoons to eat it with. And the fact that the leader would know, if you care about the men, even down to the ice cream, you would know that they needed spoons to eat the ice cream with. And so he was talking to his lieutenants and all of that. And he ended that story by saying, if you show people how much you care about them and you support them and you give them the resources and all of those things of respecting people, that in their scenario, that they would literally die for you. And I find that if you do that, that people are going to try to rise to those levels of excellence that you want for them and for the organization.
Yeah.
So that's would be mine.
Wow, that's fantastic. That's good. And how about in the area of fundraising? If you're writing a book on fundraising, what's going to be the most important chapter for you?
Well, when I was first starting and getting into fundraising, and I had all of this trepidation about asking people for money and all of that, because that's not in my nature. And I heard a lady was speaking at some kind of event, and she said that you're not asking people for money, you're asking them to invest in this kind of glorious opportunity to whatever it is that your service is. And when I began to look at it that way, it changed my whole way of thinking about fundraising. And so I would say that focus on the opportunity that you're giving people to invest in whatever that service is that you're providing. Yeah.
Wow. And then the final question, where's the most exciting place you've ever traveled? And if you could travel anywhere, where would you like to travel?
So I think probably Lebanon, Beirut, and a little village outside of Beirut. There's a mixture,
You went there?
Yeah. And over the border, there's Syria, and there's in Beirut, there's Hamas, and you have all of these. And Lebanon is basically a Christian country predominantly, but in the midst of that, you're surrounded by the prayers and everything that's going on.
How did you end up there?
Well, I travel with my daughter. Her husband is Lebanese, and so they go every year, and so I went for a trip there with them.
Wow.
And so it was, they have, and it's a country that, the Mediterranean is there, and then the mountains are here. So you can go from snow in the mountains and come down.
And it's supposed to be beautiful, right?
It's nothing like you would think a
Yeah.
Middle Eastern country would look like.
And didn't they used to say Beirut was like the Paris of the Middle East at one
Yeah,
point?
and they have a lot of French influences too.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of the people speak French, and a lot of the fashion and all of those things. But
I had an aunt who was a flight attendant on the old Pan American Airlines back in the day. And she took my grandmother on a trip around the world. And when you would ask my grandmother what was the best place, she would always say Beirut was the best place. And she went everywhere, Paris, Rome, and she would say, no, Beirut was the most beaut.
yeah,
Because
it
back in the
was-
day, I guess it was
right.
just something else.
It was nice, and I like Hawaii too. And so I've been there 3 times, and we're getting ready to go back for spring break again. So my daughters and husbands and
Yeah, wow.
one granddaughter. We're
And if
all
you
going.
could travel anywhere, where would you go, Helen?
Let's see. I would probably go to Peru.
Oh, wow. Machu
Yeah.
Picchu and all of that. I've never
Yeah.
been there either, so
Yeah.
it's very good. Helen Stagg, thank you very much for all the work that you do. Thanks for being with us today. It's been fantastic, right?
Yes, thank
So-
you very much. Thank you for inviting me. I've had a wonderful conversation. I appreciate it very much.
Very good. So that's it for our field trip here in the Nonprofit Leadership Studio. Helen Stagg was our guest. We're going to finish up our fajitas here from Ninfa's, and keep up the good work. We'll see you next time in the Nonprofit Leadership Studio.